Hello, welcome back to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today I am joined by AI artist and filmmaker Leo Crane. Would you like to say hello, sir?
Hello, Michael. Thank you for inviting me to join you on this.
Great to have you. Happy to talk. Good to catch up again. Let's hear a little bit about who you are, where you're from, how you developed into the person we're talking to today.
The big questions in life. Well, right now I'm sitting in a taxi in London town, the city where I'm from and where I have developed most of my professional practice that we're going to talk about today. And it's a fantastic city, and I love it because it kind of represents so much about me, this kind of idea of a place that the world comes to and feeds off this kind of huge creative energy that's here, both in the sort of institutional world and in the independent creative sector. And there's this sort of constant hustle and bustle that I'm a part of in so many different ways here. So I kind of came to London first as when 1999, when I finished my education and was looking for a place to live. I'd always lived in and around the city, and that's when I started working in museums, which was my my entryway into the art world. And it's still very much a kind of formative part of what I do. That idea of how arts and culture embeds itself in the fabric of the society, and the connection between the way we live our lives and the way we express ourselves, and the way that creativity can facilitate that. And I think if you sort of to speak some specifics about what I do, I come from a theatre background. So my parents are both theatre makers, and I've been on the stage since before I could walk, I think. And my brother and my two sisters are both actors and continued in that field. I ended up turning to fine art. So I was drawn to painting, to ceramics, to photography. Had some great opportunities when I was younger to develop those. Being from a theatre family, a lot of the people we hung out with were creative across many disciplines. And so I had a lot of inspiration and support in that field. And then when I finished my first degree, which was actually in ancient Greek, so I was studying sculptures and vase paintings and literature and poetry and theatre and all the things that in many ways are the foundations of a Western European society that I've grown up in. I decided to go into museums. It was a sort of natural evolution of where my studies had taken me. And eventually I ended up at a place called the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is the UK's National Museum of Art and Design. And there I really kind of discovered a whole breadth of creative industry. Yeah, the Victoria and Albert Museum was a real kind of eye-opener for me, because I saw how fine art and fashion and performance and all the different creative disciplines could come together to represent a society or many societies across the world, and connect people and place and time through the stories they tell and the kind of enduring relevance that the greatest of these art forms has from ancient times to modern day. And particularly, I worked on an exhibition called Decode, Digital Design Sensations, and that was the first ever interactive art exhibition. And I had my eyes open. This was in 2009, I think it was. And I saw the kind of the excitement of digital interactive media, and was really blown away by how human it was, and how that kind of connection with machines revealed the kind of humanity that we had, or that we have. So I gave up my career in museums and went to study CGI, computer animation. And that was also an eye opener, because I very quickly realized that the industry around this CGI animation was highly commercialized, and it's a big business industry, which was a far cry from the kind of independent, experimental, creative industry that I had grown up in and was familiar with. So after completing my master's, I set up an independent production studio in animation and developed from there, found Web3, and have continued to kind of experiment and explore since then.
Very cool. I feel like you have an extremely broad exposure to not only the arts, but creativity, as well as the business side of things, or the institutional side of things. Maybe let's say it that way. I have a question for you. Given when you were coming up and where you are you familiar with the design studio Tomato, or perhaps you guys would say Tomato?
Tomato. No, I'm not familiar with them, but I feel like I should be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they were doing great stuff through the late 90s and early 2000s. They put out a book together, that collective. I own it. I got a copy. Very cool. I think you would like it in general, just because it's very much design oriented, but artistically and creatively expressed.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, it's very
and
cool.
What kind of things do they do?
Well, at that point in time, they were doing a lot of what you were talking about with digital design and interactive experience, that kind of stuff. So they were working with, a slew of clients across, professional, corporate, and the arts and stuff like that, media in general.
I think that was one of the things that was so eye-opening for me, was this idea that you could both be experimental and commercial. And that's a very sort of alien concept in the kind of more traditional art world. But in the digital design world, and particularly through the kind of contemporary practice, not just in digital design, but also in industries like fashion and film, there's a sort of an ease at which you can kind of collaborate with brands and develop commercial projects that doesn't deny the artistry that goes into them.
Right.
Whereas I think in the fine art world, that divide has typically been much more harshly judged, and until Web3. And that's one of the things I love about Web3. It's a sort of bit like return of postmodernism or something, where people are just doing it in the way they want to do it, finding the audiences, the outlets, the markets, and it all becomes sort of self-referential and a part of the conceptual development and the language of the art that's being created.
Let's jump forward to maybe some of the more recent work you've been doing, or what you've been involved with in regards to artificial intelligence. Where did that come from? How did you get exposed to it? Maybe what were some of the early things that interested you? Anything within that kind of orientation?
Yeah, well, I'm always a little hesitant to talk about it, because in some ways I'm a bit of an imposter, in the sense that I'm not an accomplished AI creative like a lot of the AI artists who I work with or represent. But I've always been fascinated with the relationship between machine and human creativity, and my own work. I've used. I coded my first computer game in 1988 when I was 11 years old, and it's never left me, this kind of connection with the digital design exhibition I mentioned at the V&A, and going on to study CGI. When I dipped into AI kind of a couple of years ago, I was quite disappointed with the results that I was getting from the generators as they were then, and so I sort of dropped it and didn't embed it into my own practice. But I did watch it very closely, and I started to see the things that I'd struggled with for myself were people finding solutions and not ways around them, but ways to use what was there and what was sort of inherent in the way that it didn't do what you wanted it to do, and to create a new language and a new way of expressing something creative. And so I started to see artists doing some fascinating things, not necessarily things that I wanted to copy, but things that I wanted to collect and to watch and experience. And so when the opportunity came up to produce an AI event, it was sort of partly circumstantial and partly bringing together the things that, various threads that had been that I'd been weaving in different ways, and one of the things that brought it together was the opportunity to collaborate with Claire Maguire, who is someone I've associated with for a long time, and we've kind of done little projects here and there together, and this was our opportunity to kind of cement our professional relationship and do something really big and meaningful together. And that was the AFA Awards, the AI Film Academy Awards, that we launched in Lisbon in May, so just over a month ago. And it was a sort of exposure, a chance for us to really test the grounds of what is happening across the world at the very best in AI film practice. Where's the sort of the most experimental language? Where's the most industry challenging production coming from? Which parts of the world are engaging with this? And what kinds of things are really exciting to look at? And that's not about doing the same thing cheaper and quicker. It's about doing something new and something game changing.
Definitely. Are you finding with what you're seeing or what you're experimenting with that you are able to carry over the expressiveness or the thematic concepts from your traditional work into the AI space, or maybe from other artists' traditional physical work or digital work into AI?
It's a really good question. I think for me, the most exciting work is the work that it's AI, and it's AI because it couldn't possibly be made any other way. It's a different. It's I keep saying this word language, but it's a different way of expressing and communicating a core human emotional experience or state, and that is the most exciting thing that I see. If I think of, when I think of the artists that we've been working with for the AI Film Academy, I think of an artist like Renisto or Halidonto, who did building these worlds that just are so obviously AI, but also so obviously human, because they pull on an emotional level something that you can't quite explain or rationalize. And that's where I think art in whatever form it is at its most powerful, is where you can't express those same feelings in words or in any other way. But then I see artists like there's a studio called O Studio, who are based in East Asia, and they start with ink painting in a very sort of traditional manner and use those paintings as the basis for their AI movement generation. And there's something truly captivating about that, because that it's not ink painting. And I've animated ink paintings before, frame by frame, using all sorts of different techniques to bring ink alive. And this is something different. This is some kind of it's machine led, but it still has that power and that kind of inkiness of the physical medium that it started with. And that's something that interests me, because I'm actually working on a ink-based animation at the moment, and I think seeing their work and seeing some of the other applications of AI to traditional media is helping me understand what the technology can do now that it couldn't do 6 months ago.
It does move fast.
It's really fast. I mean, it's staggering how fast it's moving, and how much this sort of gold rush of commercialization is fueling the creative development and the availability of these tools. So again, there's that something of like you can't deny the importance of the commercial aspect of this, which again is exciting because it's such a sort of human part of the way that we live in this world that we've created.
How does the rapidity of the development of the space and the technology influence the programs you're putting together with Packed Lunch, those workshops? And is that helping you to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what is developing or how to utilize those tools as well, as much as teaching it?
So Packed Lunch Productions is a whole other thing that I do with my husband, Roy Joseph Butler. In fact, he's the kind of the lead on that project. And these are real grassroots community-led initiatives. So based in South London, where we are, we work with libraries and schools and community centres. And some of that is digitally not digitally led, but it involves some sort of digital technology, like the animation workshops we do. And we're currently putting together an AI learning resource. It's basically a teaching schedule which is linked to the curriculum that can be used in schools. But ultimately, it's about creating an opportunity for people to come together at that grassroots level and to find creative ways to express and explore their identities. And so for that, there is no AI gold rush. We're experimenting with AI because it's of interest to us,
sure.
And we're looking at it in other ways, but it's not intrinsic to what we do.
That's fair. And I would say the emerging technology influencing the business practices, both of those things, I would imagine, could become more relevant to those workshops, but also to the people that are looking to engage those workshops as they get exposure to it. But then also the demands of industry or just people's creative nature, maybe the push towards the broader acceptance of AI will lead these things to become more relevant or equally relevant to the workshops that you're working on.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I get what you mean. Where something like Packed Lunch Productions overlaps with what we're doing with AI Film Academy is that democratization piece that you just mentioned. So as AI becomes the kind of the building block for a lot of the platforms and the technologies that run our daily lives, whether we like it or engage with it directly or not, it's more important than ever that we help propagate this understanding of what AI is and how it's used. So this learning resource that we've been developing actually between Packed Lunch and AI Film Academy, we're actually going to partner with a national organization to roll it out across schools and libraries and community centers for exactly that reason, so that people who feel that AI is, the thing that the big secret companies build behind their closed walls that is going to exploit us all and steal our data and ultimately take over the world in a Terminator-style Judgment Day, we can help them understand that actually they can play a role in kind of developing it and building it in a way so that doesn't happen or is less likely to happen, but that in a way that it can become relevant for a school child who struggles with literacy, for example, but through AI can create visual narratives to express the stories they want to tell, or a local business who can't afford to pay content creators to develop strong social media content, so kind of falls behind with the way that their business can gain traction in this sort of social media driven world. But through learning how to use our AI tool, they can elevate that side of their community engagement through creating the kind of content that people want to see nowadays. And it puts them back in the game, even though they don't have the budgets to compete with some of the bigger companies out there. So it's got a huge democratization potential. I don't think I'm saying anything new that people who advocate for AI haven't said before. But what we can do is create the use cases and promote the stories that prove that to the world. So, for example, the winners of the AFA Awards, the Best Film Award, were an artistic duo called Ethereal Moon, Ethereal Girl, who is Dina Lokami, based in New York, and Le Moon, who is Melody Bossan, based in Marseille, in France. And they have both, as women in TV and film, and as women who had children specifically, found it difficult to build their careers in a kind of big cutthroat industry world, and ultimately dropped out of that industry and put aside their dreams of telling the stories they want to tell. And then through meeting on Instagram and developing a shared interest in AI production, they've managed to collaborate and create these incredible, entertaining, moving, and really engaging short films that have not only win awards but also sell as NFTs and provide them an income. So circumventing the industry, they've found their way to fulfill that creative potential and bring their stories to light. And that's really inspiring.
Let's rewind a little bit back to the AI Film Academy, how that got started, where the idea came from, and how it gained traction to become what it is.
Yeah, so it's a relatively recent development that comes out of both my own kind of watching of the development of AI and Claire Maguire, my co-founder. She's been involved as a creating AI imagery and involved in using it in her own consultancy and artist management. And we came together to do an AI event. We were asked by Non-Fungible Conference in Lisbon, the big NFT festival that happens every year, to run their first night. So the kind of the headline event for the festival on day one was going to be an open call of AI films, and that was an exciting proposition. But it also wasn't quite enough for us. So we seen there were AI film festivals popping up all over the place. Runway had already been doing theirs for a couple of years. Various new ones were popping up. As a filmmaker myself, I could see them on Film Freeway and these kind of film festival platforms. And some of the bigger festivals were also having their own AI categories. So we thought, why do another thing that's being done quite well already? So instead, let's go bigger. Let's become the Oscars of the AI film and do a big red carpet Web3 celebration of excellence in AI filmmaking, and just show the world that AI film is not just about the kind of deep fakes and the putting writers out of business, but is also about an incredible global creativity that allows people to kind of compete with the big industry, even if they can't access the networks and the budgets that kind of make it a gate-kept industry. So we pulled together this event at very short notice, but we had the support of the NFC team and some great sponsors, and of course the incredible artists. So our open call was we got artists from 6 continents submitting, and we had this amazing jury of 8 AI pioneers helping us break that open call down from the hundreds who submitted through to pre-select lists of 30, and then the 13 finalists who were shown on the night. We also worked with 2 feature artists, an artist called Fantastic Planet, and they, both Claire and I had followed their work for a while. These kind of multi-figure organic compositions, and we worked with them to create an interactive, immersive AI red carpet experience. So as people walked the physical red carpet, they entered into this weird and kind of distorted world of the AI history of cinema. So tracking all these technological developments that have made cinema what it is, from the Muybridge through to Lumiere Brothers and advent of sound, and almost through, so that AI kind of takes its place as this natural next big step in the evolution of cinema, and along with it a whole history of kind of who gets to tell their stories and who doesn't, and making sure that the figurative representation of the people who are telling this history is much more representative through the AI lens than it was in actual fact. And I know Fantastic Planet, they're particularly interested in the kind of the history of women in cinema, the history of race in cinema. And so it was a platform to talk about that, and really kind of raise up the hopes that AI can do it differently and more democratically. Then we had the jury showcase and the showcase of the AI finalists, and then we presented the awards, and the whole evening was rounded off by our second feature artist, who is this incredible singer called Noan, and she performs in an immersive AI set. So the coming together of the creative industries was kind of epitomized by her set, where we were surrounded by AI film with live music, and she was a fashion designer as well, so there was the fashion element too. And that was important for us to show, is that in the Web3 world, and certainly through AI, you can bring these industries together in a way that kind of transcends those traditional industry silos.
Where do you think things are heading, or what is the most interesting potential future for artificial intelligence, creativity, monetization, any mix of those things or amalgamation of the ideas you might have?
That's a huge question. I wish I knew the answer, but in some ways, not knowing the answer is the most exciting thing, because it's up to us to create that future. So I think it's really important that we, if we want to see a particular thing happen or not happen, that we engage with it and we shape it. So from my part, I can see a world where we just replicate the same thing again, only cement the hierarchies and the power structures and the monetization pathways even more strongly than they are already. So in order for that not to happen, because that's not what I want to happen, we need to envision an alternative future, which is very much kind of shaped, in my mind, by the Web3 journey that I've had, through blockchain. And anyone who's been here for any short amount of time will know the importance of decentralization and democratization and globalization, access, transparency, all those values that kind of permeate the Web3 dream. So I think by challenging the structures that exist, and I don't mean that necessarily in a sort of naive, sort of fuck the system way, but in a kind of way that we have a moment, I think, particularly coming off the back of the streaming revolution, that we can change let's talk about film, what a film product is. The film industry has kind of defined what film can be. Whether if you want theatrical distribution in a cinema, you need to have a film that is of a certain length, of a particular kind of content, that's going to have a particular commercial return on its run. If you want to go to have festival success, you still have to fit in the mold of, are you a short? Are you a feature? What kind of category you're going to fit into? And it's typically all single screen film that starts at the beginning and ends at the end. I think with Web3, what we've seen is partly through kind of opportunism and circumstance and also naivety and lack of experience, which can be huge motivators for change, is people have found other ways to share and distribute the artwork that's being created, including film. So this idea that we can reshape what the film product is, I think is a really exciting proposition. So we don't have to have single screen theatrical releases. We can create film for immersive spaces or for phones or for whatever it might be. The duration, the linearity can all be challenged. And I know this is not new. We've seen that kind of people respond to that through social media or whatever. But I think now there's the aspect of that, we could, by being able to create an asset out of it through the blockchain that can be commercialized, and the whole Film 3 movement of this direct to fan monetization that allows independent creators to control their audiences and their income is something that is not easy. Let's be fair, and it's got some way to go before we have really strong use cases. But is certainly, in theory, it's totally possible. And as blockchain and AI get normalized as the building blocks of the future of technology, I think we'll see stronger foundations for making that happen. What do you think?
For me, I think that whenever there's an improvement in control for an individual, not only in expressiveness, but monetization and distribution and monetization are important to me. Because what I find with a lot of the, say, books that I turn out or film that I turn out is, if I want to get them to more audiences, it means that I have to find new markets for them. In many cases, there's a pretty high gate to some of those channels. Say, for example, streaming platforms for video, or let's say like the ISBN requirement for a lot of digital distribution or even print on demand services out there. I think that those things are a disservice to creatives in a lot of ways. And there's, obviously, there need to be some aspect of standards, but at the same time, I don't think that there should be this level of gatekeeping that we see. Like, if you want to participate in the aggregation of scans for book sales, that's fine, but it's probably not really all that important for some people, whether they're authors or artists. And I think that kind of comes into play specifically when you're looking at Web3 and blockchain, not only for monetization, but distribution, and then also record keeping. To me, blockchain is really a database. It can be a database for information, or it could be a database for content, and it can also be a payment rail for both of those functions. But at the heart of it, it really is about tracking the data integrity and ideally the provenance of the work, right? Those things, when they're brought down to, let's say, street level for creatives, that is incredibly powerful. When there are very direct relationships with those pieces of technology, then it makes a more seamless connection between the artist and the artwork that they're creating, or media, or whatever it is that they're making, and the audience that wants to participate in the work that they're doing, whether that is purely observational or consumptive in a profitability sense. So that, that to me is really valuable. I think that, like, as the tools become more streamlined, let's say, and less about the third-party platforms, that's a positive thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a real nut to crack still with Web3 and particularly with blockchain about the relationship between the person who supports bringing the artwork to market. So whether we want to call that the distributor, the curator, the gatekeeper, whoever, the artists don't. An artist doesn't have the capacity to do everything, right? And this has been I think at the crux of the kind of Web3 dream is this desire to have the direct contact between the artists and their fan base, which is great. But I think that mediation is still so important, and that role is yet, I think, to be defined properly and fully to what it means in this new democratized world.
Curation is valuable, and I think that if you are a strong curator and you're bringing an audience to it, there's probably a very high value to that.
Yeah, but I think there's been quite a sort of binary approach to curation. It's like either we hate curators, which was the sort of original Web3 mantra, through to we need exactly the same kind of curator who has always existed to come in and do the same kind of job, but we don't really understand what that is particularly, so we'll kind of do it a bit candidly. And I think there hasn't been an innovation piece around what a curator is in the same way that there has been around what an artist is or who an artist can be. And I think that could happen. I don't know what the answer is. But I do think there are some interesting things to look at in terms of the monetization piece. For example, when you look at AI, the whole ownership of data sets and the licensing of data sets, I think, creates a really interesting and viable business model for artists. So, for example, there's an AI platform called VoiceSwap where an artist can create a data set out of their voice, and then anyone can license that data set to create songs in that artist's voice, and the artist, because it's on chain, gets an automatic percentage of those of that usage licensing fee. And that is not only great because the artist gets it gets financially compensated, but also is part of the whole authenticating and acknowledging of the creativity behind what a data set can do. And VoiceSwap's not the only one doing it. There are other AI platforms that do that for image generation. It's that sort of evolution of the licensing model that we've seen on certain image platform, stock images or stock music platforms, but that's taken into I think a potentially much more artist-centered way. That's exciting for me because that's different, that's new, and that's evolved, and it speaks to what this new technology can do, rather than just try and squash the old way into the new mold that we don't quite know the shape of yet.
I feel like we could go down a real deep rabbit hole on information theory and network effect.
Yeah.
But instead, what I'm going to ask you is, are there any things that we have not yet addressed that you feel are important to get into the conversation?
Well, I haven't spoken about my own work, which is something that at the moment is taking a backseat because of all the other exciting stuff going on.
Well, maybe that's why it's ending up here.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to forget about it, because actually part of the point of doing the whole AI Film Academy is about helping upskill myself and increase my knowledge of what's happening so I can incorporate it in my own work. So I'm doing my first feature film at the moment. It's an animation called The Masterpiece of Tamagata, and it's a hand-painted ink animation that I've been working on frame by frame with my co-director Ilona Sashitsky since 2019. So we're in our 5th year now, and it's painstaking and it
Sounds
takes
like it.
forever, because it's traditional animation, and that's what you have to deal with in that world. But it's a story of two worlds. It's a story of a world of the where the pressures of reality really kind of cause a reckoning to the two central characters, Shikishi and her husband Tamagata, and then the story of the kind of boundless imagination that they both share to create their own world into which they escape. And it's that secondary world, that imagination world, that I want to create in AI, still using traditional ink painting techniques, but rather than going frame by frame, seeing if what the AI will do to create something that just doesn't feel real, but still feels like it's forged from the same source material. So I'm really excited about that, and about the AI artists we can work with to make it happen, and about bringing it to screen to show this idea that AI can have so many applications, that an AI film is not just something that you write some text into a generator and spit out some scenes, that it can really be an involved and deep part of a mixed pipeline of creative techniques that
Absolutely.
can create something that's so new and reflective of the complexity of the humanity and the stories that we want to tell.
Well, Leo, great conversation. I feel like I
Thank you,
learned
Michael.
a slew of background information about you and what you're working on. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope the moving around in the busy city of London wasn't too distracting for you in the interview.
No. There's a little bit of background noise, but we'll be able to sort it out in post, as they say.
Yeah, the famous line.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks very much, Michael, and I look forward to hearing it and staying in touch and hearing your other guests as well.
Enjoy the rest of your day.